Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root, where we dive deep into understanding and addressing root causes of chronic health issues so you can help and find healing inside and out, now and forever. Hello, and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root. I'm Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice, Trifecta Collective. Welcome to the podcast. So today's topic is going to be all about stress, and specifically, how do we define stress and what really is stress? Because I feel like so many people I talk to, when I say the word stress and dealing with stress, they always think, okay, well, I've got my work stress, I've got my family stress, I've got, all these external stressors, and we almost miss the bigger point of what really is stress and how it impacts the body inside, outside, physically, mentally, emotionally, potentially spiritually, and all of the encompassing pieces of this, and why it's such a big deal when it comes to healing from chronic illness issues, when it comes to weight loss. And this is where I really see this total concept completely missed. And anytime I share this perspective with a practitioner or another coach or anything, they're like blown away. They're like, "Oh my goodness, I never thought about it like that. That makes total sense," and gives such a different perspective on weight loss, specifically for women, and why so many women can very much struggle to lose weight, and also for things like hormonal shifts. And specifically, I am going to target perimenopause because this is often the time period for women where dealing with our stress almost becomes non-negotiable. And this is really why perimenopause hits so many women so hard, is the amount of stress that they've been carrying for such a long time. And once again, we need to reframe this concept of stress and what this really is, what this really looks like, how it impacts our bodies, and also how to support our bodies through this. Before I do that, though, I just want to give a little update, and even I think before that, just like a huge thank you for I've had many people reach out to me and just, say I'm in their thoughts and their prayers, like sending me good juju, good energy, just they're thinking about me, and my fiance Jonathan, as I've been dealing with some health struggles here, and I want to share a little update on I got most of my labs back, and I want to share what I think actually happened here, and the multifaceted thing that I think actually happened that contributed to all of this. And yeah, just a huge thank you to everyone. I super appreciate it. I'm feeling better now. The last few weeks have definitely, and for the last like month or so, has been very challenging. Just trying to support Jonathan through his last handful of treatments. We've got his last treatment is, as of the recording of this, like a week from today, or I'm sorry, a week from tomorrow, as of the recording. And yeah, it's just been a lot. So thank you, just like thank you. I am definitely on the mend. For me, the biggest thing was this like random nausea that was coming up. And what I think happened is I got food poisoning. And I mean, I've never had food poisoning this bad in my life, but I think what it was is I got food poisoning, by the way, not from like anything crazy. I think, and once again, like I'm putting these pieces together, and some of this is guesswork, and some of this I'll never actually know the answer. But this is what I think is probable: is that I got food poisoning, likely from a chicken sausage brand that I've used many times before. I have actually eaten since then that I have a lot of, and it's a staple in my breakfast routine. And yeah, I think this was just like a bad batch or something. It got exposed to something, and I got really bad food poisoning. Also, if you're watching this, you can see Cusco being, he's got some zoomies in the background here. Um, but yeah, I think I got really bad food poisoning, and I'm fighting that, and it has lingered. I think I got some sort of bacterial infection of some sort, which is what my lab showed. My inflammation was really high on my blood work, my white blood cell count. All the other inflammation markers were good, by the way, indicating this is really an immune system thing. And then my neutrophils were off the charts, which is very indicative of a bacterial infection, bacterial overgrowth of some sort.
I went down my own symptom list of like, okay, could this be SIBO? Could this be just like a really bad like flare up of SIBO? Like I have no, I mean, none, zero, zero of those symptoms coming up. And so like, no, I don't think it's SIBO. I don't think it's like some sort of bacterial, long-term bacterial overgrowth. I think it's an acute infection that I likely got from food. And so I'm still on my liver support. My thyroid actually looks really good, which I was really happy about. I've had a couple nutrient deficiencies, nothing super crazy, zinc and copper being the big ones. My folate could be just a tiny bit higher, but generally speaking, it's okay. Like cortisol looks good. Just like overall stress looks really good. Um, you know, uh, my cholesterol is slightly elevated, which is indicative that I'm detoxing. I'm actively detoxing, which I already knew. Liver enzymes look good. So yeah, I mean, like by and large, my labs look pretty good, all things considering. And yeah, I think it's just a bacterial infection that I got. And so I'm just looking, I'm looking at them right now. I'm on two supplements that we commonly use with clients, Para 1 and Para 2 from Cellcore. Para 1's a substance called Mimosa pudica. It's basically just like a sticky substance that goes through a digestive tract and helps to pull things out that should not be there. Really great anytime you're going to kill. It acts as a biofilm disruptor. It also acts as a binder to help bind up and limit some of the negative side effects we can often experience. It doesn't fix them all. And for some, it doesn't make a huge difference, but it does help pull out, especially if we're killing anything. It can help pull out any of that kind of stuff. And then Para 2 is a really good broad spectrum antimicrobial. It helps with bacteria, yeast, fungus, and parasites throughout the digestive tract. So I'm on these. I notice a difference. Cusco is wild right now. If you're not watching and want to see a cute and crazy kitty cat, I very much encourage you to pull this up on YouTube if you're not already. So yeah, this Para 2 works exclusively within the digestive tract. And within about 2 days of being on full, or we'll call them standard dosages, because I will likely probably increase from a standard dose, which is 2 capsules twice a day on empty of each of these. So I notice a difference within 2 days of being on these standard dosages. And which is a really good sign. I'm not nauseous. I can eat the last handful of mornings. I've been able to eat a full breakfast. I've not woken up with the nausea, which has felt so, so, so good. I'm not perfect. I don't feel 100% yet. My belly is still a little bit a hit or miss. Got some stuff going on. And Cusco is a wild child right now. So I've got a few, I'm not perfect and I'm getting a lot better. So, assuming I continue to do well with these, I will just stay this course for probably 3 to 4 weeks. And then if for some reason I take a turn, I'm noticing I'm starting to go backwards, at that point I will go get an antibiotic because it is bacterial in nature. Antibiotics are designed for bacterial infections of a variety of sorts. So, but I would really prefer not to. It is a personal preference. Would it be quicker if I did an antibiotic? Potentially. And I also know that there's a lot of other side effects that I would prefer not to deal with if I am able to not do it. So that is a personal decision. For some people, when they're in a circumstance not exactly like this, but a circumstance similar to this, sometimes I'm like, do the antibiotic. Just do it. Let's get you feeling better. For me, once again, like this was a very personal decision to continue with supplementation versus medication. I've also not had to take an antibiotic in at least 6 years, and I would very much prefer not to if I don't have to, and it is absolutely on the table if that is the route that I need to go. So there's always that kind of balance here. So yeah, that just a little update. So I'm on the mend. I'm still, very much detoxing and pushing things out of my body. I can tell. And it's, yeah, just like with our clients, it's not the most comfortable. It's not my favorite thing to be doing. It's not my favorite place to be in this place. And it is what it is. And I was prepared for this to happen. The food poisoning was a whole other level to this that just, I think, really, really exacerbated and set my body into not a great place, and it's working on coming back. So I've added in those. I'm still on all the other supplements that I kind of talked about. I'm also on another immune modulating supplement that is something I don't know if I've ever recommended it, to be honest. Typically, I don't find that we need it, and I am going heavy on the supplements right now, and just trying to get through these last few weeks of Jonathan's treatment, of trying to feel better. I've got work stuff I want to do, and just like all these different things that are on my plate that I would like to be able to get through and support my body, in which case I'm okay taking additional supplements for a short period of time. So this supplement's called AHCC, Mimi, the medicine. I think that's her handle is someone who has talked about, is someone who I've followed for a very long time. I know firsthand many people who have taken this particular product, and she does not have the only one of this. And she is someone that I trust because I know these other people have taken it, and some of them continue to take this supplement long term and have noticed a big difference. So I decided to get on this. I knew I was fighting with my immune system was fighting something. I knew inflammation was high. And once again, I have noticed a difference. And I think between that and the liver supporting supplements I'm on, I've noticed a difference. I was just talking to Jonathan last night. I felt like there was some inflammation, like my lymphatic system was a little sluggish, which makes sense because I stopped sweating and, I wasn't pushing things out like I was supposed to be. And I've noticed particularly in like my armpit area where we have a lot of lymph nodes here, I wasn't particularly swollen. I didn't have enlarged lymph nodes, just felt puffy in some of those particular areas, meaning that lymph was stagnant. And I'm noticing a very big shift in just my body really doing a good job right now of draining, which is awesome and will only continue to help. So just wanted to give a quick little update here on that before diving into stress, which obviously this plays a huge role in stress and all of these things. So when it comes to stress, we have these really big obvious stressors, and certain stressors are controllable and some of them are not. And I'll even share that sometimes what we think is not controllable is actually we do have some control over if we maybe take a different look, a different perspective on this. So, the very obvious external stressors: working a lot, working on big projects, working on big deadlines, working in a bad environment, working in a place that you don't particularly like, doing work that you maybe don't particularly like. Work stressors are a really big one. Family. This might be a significant other, this might be kids, this might be parents, this might be siblings, this might be all of the above. And there can be a lot going on in that. And I'll say, particularly if you have a lot of stress in the environment where you are currently living, that is a really big deal. Not having a safe place where you can unwind, where you can decompress, where you can feel safe, where you can kind of let go, put down some of your walls, like that's a really big deal. And there are a lot of controllables. And here's the thing with somebody, this side of things in particular, and I'll even say with work, because we end up with a lot of clients who end up leaving their jobs, switching jobs, doing a lot of things like that. We also have a handful of people who end up just realizing that their relationships aren't the best, whether that's with a significant other, maybe that's putting up some stricter boundaries with parents, maybe that's even potentially cutting off certain people in their lives. This might be friends, significant others, family, other family members, all that kind of stuff. And I'll say, I've posted a couple of things in the last few weeks too about this, just I've reposted. Oh, let me say that I've reposted some things in that, if you're, let me tell you a story before I give you a kind of an open invitation here. So, I grew up with a single mom, only child. My father was not around. I do have a relationship with him now, not a super close one, but I do have a relationship with him now. And my mother was it. I didn't have a ton of other adults in my life. My uncle came into my life pretty strongly in my early 20s, which I'm so grateful for. And he became a very, very important part of my life for many years up until his passing just a few years ago. And, making the decision to put up boundaries with a parent, especially a parent who may exhibit a lot of toxic behaviors. And for me, that really looks like, with my mom originally, it was, hey, I'm not going to speak with you on the phone while you're drunk. And she's like, yeah, I'm not drunk. And I'm like, I've lived with you. I've lived with you for 17 years. I know when you're drunk. I know when you've had a couple drinks. I know when you've had two drinks. I also know when you've had two bottles of wine or and so I know all of the steps in between those, and I know what this sounds like, and I know what you act like and what you sound like. I'm telling you right now, you've drank, and I'm not having a conversation with you at this time. Feel free to call me whenever you're sober, and I'll be more than happy to chat. And so that's how my initial kind of boundary got set up. And it was on me to uphold that boundary, which was super unfortunate that, I was 20 when I had to set that boundary. And I even started setting that much more casually earlier than that in my late teens, pretty much as soon as I left for college. And even when I was still living in that house with her, I would leave at night. I would go lock myself in my room because I was not trying to deal with that garbage anymore. And I knew it wasn't good for me. And it was just, for me, it was a matter of time of like, okay, when can I leave? When is that going to be possible and feasible for me? And I looked at various options. I looked at emancipation multiple times. I had thought about going to live with my uncle or going to live with my best friend from high school. And, I thought about all of these things. So, those were kind of how some initial boundaries got set up for me. And it got to a point where, I set up boundaries and then I got strict around those boundaries. And there was an event that I went to and I said, look, I'm not dealing with your BS. I'm not dealing with your drinking. If you're going to be super drunk, I'm not going to speak with you and I'm not going to be around you and I want no part of it. And I really was very blunt about it. And of course, she got extremely intoxicated. She made a whole scene. She like fell into a table. I mean, it was a whole thing. And that was it. That was the last straw for me. And we had a handful of conversations after that event. And that was in 20, I think it was 2016 that happened, fall of 2016. And she passed away in June of 2020. So really the last almost 4 years of her life, we barely spoke. And it's super unfortunate. I got a lot of pushback from it, from other family members, from her friends, especially when she was passing. And after the fact, after she passed, I got a lot of grief for it. And people had some words for me and some thoughts. And at the time, it was very frustrating. And now I look back and I understand where they were coming from. And also, let's ask the question, if a child cuts off a parent and will no longer speak to that parent, what did the parent do? What really happened? Is this really an act of defiance? Is it really on the child? And or almost more importantly, what did the parent really do? And what happened there that a child, and I tell you this from personal experience, it was not an easy decision, and it broke my heart on the regular. Of I don't want to cut off this parent, especially for me. That was my parent. I only have one parent growing up. I didn't have any siblings. Like I didn't have anyone else, and so for me to essentially completely stop speaking to her, what happened? And what did she do? What was the situation? And I think if you are in a similar position where you are thinking about cutting off a parent and or cutting off anyone else in your life, you know, I encourage you to trust your gut. If you feel like that is the best thing for you, it probably is. And I would encourage you to really sit with yourself a little bit and ponder, all right, am I coming from a place of pure hatred? Am I coming from a place of I'm just so sad and so heartbroken and so hurt by this person? And by the way, all of these are valid, are valid reasons. And are you doing this out of spite or maybe are you doing this to try and protect yourself so that you can heal? And for me, that was it. I really knew I needed to heal at that time, and I was doing my best. I was already starting to dive into certain things, and started on trauma healing shortly after that. And just I knew there was a better way. I knew I could feel better, and I could heal, and I could not be repeating so many of these same patterns that I saw growing up from her. And it was not easy. And I knew that is 100% what I needed to do to really start on my own healing journey. And so, invitation for you, if you are in that position, if you are thinking about putting yourself in that position, yeah, it's really hard. And sometimes we need space from people. Some people, all people, certain types of people in our healing journey to be able to heal. And it sucks. And it's not fun. And it can hurt a lot. Sometimes it can hurt even more than keeping them in your life. And sometimes that is the best thing you can do for yourself in your own healing journey. So just being mindful and aware of the people that you are surrounding yourself with. And if you feel like that you are a person where, you're in a similar position that I was in, it's okay. One, it doesn't have to be forever. Two, it's okay if it even is forever or for a short period of time or for an extended period of time. If that's what you need to do in order to heal and they are really pulling you back and preventing you from doing your own healing work, sometimes that's what needs to happen. So you are not a bad person. I would encourage you that you feel the guilt, feel the shame, whatever you are feeling, and let it go. Let it go the best you can because it is not all just on you. So all of these external stressors, and once again, some of these are controllable, some of them are not controllable. For me, my situation, previously, like the reason I got divorced, the reason I left my life, because I could control that. And I knew that was no longer the best environment for me at that point in time. And it was a very challenging decision to make. None of those decisions are easy. And it was absolutely the right decision. And for me right now, I'm going through a stressful period of time. My partner got diagnosed earlier this year with cancer, 12 rounds of chemotherapy in 24 weeks, which is crazy aggressive, even for cancer, short period of time. And this will end. And no, it's not easy. Yeah, I would love to not do this. And it's temporary. And it is what it is. My partner will come out better on the other side, cancer free. We'll get him feeling better after the fact, and life will go on. And there's nothing about our relationship that is, for me, that is unhealthy, that is, bringing up stress in a bad way or anything like that. This is just a temporary situation where, yeah, there's not a lot of things I could control around this situation, and it is what it is. And I'm going to do my very best to support myself in all of the ways during this period of time, which I have talked about in many other episodes here. So we've got these external stressors. Then we also have internal stressors. And this is where it gets a little bit more complicated and very individualized. And, you can deal with these external stressors for some people a very long time and be totally okay. And once again, this is where women, when we start to hit perimenopause, where this can really bring about, okay, you've been able to handle it, which is great. And you can no longer handle it. And so now we have to really start controlling our controllables and reducing stress inside, outside of the body, all of these types of things. So, but when we look inside the body, some of the more obvious ones of that, most people can think of, and maybe even don't think of stress, but I would consider stressful, lack of sleep. If someone's not sleeping well or enough, that is very stressful. Our body needs sleep. Same thing, hydration. Our body needs water. It needs water. It needs electrolytes. We can get those electrolytes from food for a lot of people. For some others, we need external electrolytes, especially if you eat a very, very whole foods-based diet. Yeah, we might need some extra electrolytes. But hydration, if we're dehydrated and if we're chronically dehydrated, man, is that stressful on the body. I mean, that can show up acutely, so short-term dehydration as headaches, migraines, a little bit of joint pain, fatigue. Those are kind of the big ones. And longer-term dehydration, I mean, chronic back pain, kidney issues, chronic headaches and migraines, skin issues, detox issues, hair falling out, thyroid dysfunction, adrenal dysfunction, digestive dysfunction. I mean, all of these things. And so it's like, okay, if you're all of a sudden if you're stressed and low-hanging fruit, dehydration, if you're only drinking 20 to 40 ounces of water a day, well, let's start there. Let's get you at least hydrated. Not that that's going to fix everything. And low-hanging fruit. Let's reduce the stress from your on your body from a dehydration standpoint. Nutrition, obviously, nutrition's a really big one here, and I think this can go quite a few ways. So, most obvious, if you're eating crap and a bunch of junk and processed food, eating out all the time, that's a big stressor on the body, just in and of itself. If you're flooding your body with chemicals from any source, whether that's from food, fast food, just eating out a lot, eating a lot of packaged food with a lot of chemicals in it, not great. Our body's probably going to have some sort of stress and or inflammatory response. Even if we think of, okay, if you eat your food really fast all the time, that's really stressful on the body too. Our body is designed to digest food in a rest and digest parasympathetic state. If you're rushing and just shoving food in your mouth, one, you're not chewing, which is a huge part of the digestive process and makes a really big difference on our stomach and our stomach's ability to continue the digestive process. And we can oftentimes end up with larger chunks of food than we really should have, especially in our small intestine. And then that can lead to some leaky gut type issues, which is super common. So we have a variety of eating nutrition. Now, nutritional stress, eating too much, also a stressor, having too many calories. What about too little of the essential calories? So anyone who's been on or spent a lot of time in a low fat diet, man, is that stressful on the body. And we see it, especially in the liver and gallbladder. We really, man, I mean, we can tell almost immediately, like, hey, did you do Atkins for a while? Did you do the low fat craze like back in the day when it was really popular for quite some time? They're like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we can tell on your labs. So that can become pretty apparent. Not getting enough protein is really stressful on the body. Our body needs protein. Protein and fat are the only two essential nutrients that we absolutely need to survive. Now, this does not mean that carbohydrates, vegetables, and or starchy carbs aren't valuable because they really, really are. Obviously, fruits, vegetables, things with fiber in them go a really long way, are really, really beneficial for almost everyone. And too much can also be not good too. Too many starches and carbohydrates for some people. Also, that can be really stressful. Also, where are we getting these things from? Which cannot be not be very good either, especially if a lot of them are coming from sugars, especially sugars that are sugar in general. Just we shouldn't be eating a ton of actual sugar. And by sugars, I mean desserts. I don't mean fruit. Fruit is a natural sugar. It is not bad. You know, for some people, do we need to eat like 2 bananas a day? There's quite a bit of starches and sugars, and that maybe not. Maybe we rethink that depending on the person, and maybe it's not the most beneficial. And you know, if someone's having a slice of cake or cupcakes or Oreos or whatever it is every single day, that's not great either. And the sugars, especially the artificial sugars, processed sugars, are just not super great for from a stress standpoint for our bodies because these are not natural to us, to our bodies, to what it's supposed to and designed to be able to digest. So that can be really stressful. Eating too little is also very stressful. And this is almost It's like really borderline for me. I see a lot of women who are eating potentially too many calories for their bodies and not getting just the right energies and kind of mix of nutrients that they really need. But almost the same amount, potentially more, are actually eating too little. And now we have one, we're just not getting enough nutrients, we're not getting enough calories, and so they're super tired. Of course, your body doesn't have enough energy, doesn't have enough nutrients to go. But also, and once again, this is where like some of the metabolic and like perimenopausal weight gain can really show and really become apparent is if we have killed our metabolism and if we have starved ourselves for a significant period of time in our lives, that is also not good. And that is very stressful on our body from a nutrient digestive standpoint, from a hormone standpoint. And by the way, if you're not getting a period and you are designed to do that, if you are still within a good age range where you should be getting a consistent menstrual cycle, one of the first things I would look at is your calorie intake. And are you getting enough calories that your body feels safe enough to regulate hormones? That's a huge one. But also, if we've been eating low calorie for a significant period of time, our bodies are really smart. They adjust. And this is also why if you do the same workouts for a year, for even for more than a few months, and you notice like significant weight loss, maybe at the beginning, and progress stalled, this is a huge reason why. Our body gets used to and will adjust and get accustomed to its environment. And if you are telling it, hey, I need you to get used to eating only 1,000 calories a day, guess what? It will. If you tell your body and you send the signal, hey, I need you to get used to running an hour every single day for weight loss, guess what? It will get really used to that really quickly, and you won't see long-term success from a weight loss perspective. And if you're focusing mostly on cardio from a weight loss perspective, the signal that you're telling your body is lose weight at any cost versus this is where strength training really comes into play. When you strength train, and that is your primary way for weight loss, for metabolic health, for just shifting our body composition, you're saying, hey, build muscle, send the calories to the muscles, which means that your body fat is eventually going to start dropping. It may not do it right away, may take a little bit longer, and you're not going to lose less muscle or bone, and you're going to lose more body fat. Assuming we need to look at once again, all of these things all together, nutrition, lifestyle, movement, what kind of signal are we telling our body? What do our macros look like? What other things do we have going on in our body? All of these things play a really big role. So from a nutritional standpoint, there's a lot of different types of stressors here too. Now, let's look a little bit bigger picture. So any sort of dysfunction within our body is going to be a stressor. Most simply, this might be nutrient deficiencies or too much of certain nutrients. And the one I'm really going to throw under the bus here is vitamin D. Gosh, people are over supplementing with vitamin D so hardcore. And even if we look at Western medicine for sure, but even in the functional health and wellness space, functional medicine space, people are way over supplementing with vitamin D. And it's not good. And it's because they're not understanding how vitamin D really works within our body and the pathways that it takes to get into our cells. And most people only look at 25-OHD, which is the standard blood marker for vitamin D. Now, this is one of two vitamin D markers. We really should be testing both at least once a year, depending on the person. And both of these should be at about a 1-to-1 ratio within each other. So when we only look at this 25-OHD, especially people who are experiencing any sort of chronic health-related symptoms, this is a really big deal because maybe that shows low, quote unquote low. And I'll say my range for 25-OHD is 25 to 50, Most of the time, you're going to see 60, anywhere between 60 to 100 as the functional medicine range, way too high. If you really look at the studies here and look at the physiology and how vitamin D is metabolized and then how it goes into our cells here, we really need to be looking at all of this. Plus, we can end up with some crazy nutrient deficiencies and or kidney problems if we're not monitoring all of this, which we see, by the way, all the time. So we have, if we're too much vitamin D, we're intaking too much. So that's going to be converted largely through our kidneys, and it requires a variety of nutrients. Zinc and magnesium are two really, really big ones. And then it's converted into something called 125 dihydroxy vitamin D or calcitriol. This is the marker that almost no one looks at. That's really important because this then is absorbed directly into the cells. So what can happen, especially people who have chronic illness issues, is maybe that original marker shows up low. However, if we see that secondary marker show up high, that means we are getting enough. We are converting it. However, it's not being absorbed into our cells, which is the really big issue here. And if we just continue over supplementing and over supplementing with vitamin D, then we can start to impact our immune system. We can hide some things that may be underlying things that may be going on, especially chronic viral issues. And it can exacerbate what we call the cell danger response, meaning that your body is so stressed out that from a cellular perspective, your cellular health has been compromised at this point and is no longer in a good position. And this can be for a variety of reasons. There can be a lot of things going on. It could be the cell membrane. It could be things going on within the cell. It could be your mitochondrial health. It can be any and or all of those. This is the most common one that I see, vitamin D. However, people can oversupplement with all kinds of things and cause all kinds of imbalances. This is why it's really not smart to just willy-nilly supplement or, hey, I read this thing online and it says that if you have these feelings, if you feel like this, take the supplement. Cool, you can do a lot of damage. And I say this as someone who was injured, even working with a practitioner who is supposedly skilled in lab work, where once again, I'm still dealing with some mild oversaturation issues with iron. That's a really big one. Yes, you may be iron deficient. However, you have to run tests to make sure that is the case. And also understand, hey, by the way, there's also 3 different types of anemia. You may not just be iron deficient, and you may not be iron deficient at all. It may be other things going on that are impacting your iron. Also, you need to know what tests to look at when it comes for this. Ferritin, terrible, terrible, terrible marker when it comes to straight up what is your iron doing. Not a good test because it's impacted by too many other things going on. So those are all really important. Now, we also need to look at, okay, so we've got nutrient deficiencies, just overall digestive health issues. Low stomach acid is another really, really big one. Anytime stress is high, once again, internal, external stress, our stomach acid levels are going to drop. This is a really big deal because if we have low stomach acid issues, one, you may start to have acid reflux or heartburn type issues, in which case you may be put on a PPI. You may take things like Tums or Pepcid or things like that will just further lower. Even baking soda, by the way, you should not be drinking baking soda. I know there's like big health things going on right now of like drink baking soda. Okay, well that decreases your stomach acid production too. Let's not do that on the regular. Let's not willy-nilly recommend this. Let's also not willy-nilly recommend taking apple cider vinegar especially straight up, because that'll damage your tooth enamel. Same thing with like lemon water. Consistent lemon water will erode your entire tooth enamel. So these are just all things we have to think about when it comes to stress. So nutrient deficiency, stomach acid production, just overall digestive issues. Those are all very, very, very stressful. Gut overgrowth issues, very stressful for whatever reason that they happen. And this could be a variety of reasons. There's usually not just one. Usually we need to look at a variety of things that happen and shift all of these things in order to make sure that one, we get digestion back into a good spot. Two, more importantly, digestion stays in a really good spot. Toxin load, man, this is a big one. Just if we look at our environment, especially for women, beauty products, anything you put on your skin, in your hair, all of this stuff, there's so many products out there that are just filled with complete junk and garbage that are then absorbed into your body. And now your body has to push all this stuff out. Body can only do so much of that. And if our toxin load and exposure is just super high, just on a day-to-day basis, it's a really big deal. Let alone if we're on medication, whether it's over the counter or prescription that has particularly aluminum in it, big deal. Water. What's in your water? Uranium, arsenic, mercury, lead, aluminum. All of these things, really big deal if you're drinking that all day, every day. What are you cooking with? That's a really big deal. If you use a bunch of aluminum foil, if you use all the non-stick kind of pans, really big deal. And, here's the thing. These things here and there, not a big deal. Your body's also designed to be able to push these things out. It's when it has too much to deal with that it can't keep up anymore. And that's when people really start to feel a lot of these side effects. And once again, for many women, this may not hit until perimenopause when now your body is designed to start shifting and changing, and that's adding an extra layer of stress, and your body can no longer keep up with all of this. So that's a really big deal. Now we can get into, some other things here and things that once again, like maybe people don't think about. Antibiotic use. And I'm not just talking right now. Like for me, I know I was on antibiotics quite a bit growing up. I remember having strep throat a whole bunch. I remember being on amoxicillin a bunch. My memory for childhood is a little hit or miss, but I do remember the strep and amoxicillin quite vividly, and I was on that quite a bit. And so, like, that destroys a lot of your gut microbiome. And so it was built and designed to be very robust and be able to handle a lot. And if we're every year, a couple of times a year, we're going and killing a whole bunch of stuff in there and not rebuilding it, yeah, that's going to lead to some long-term issues. So, and that may be the case right now. What about your trauma history? We talked about current, like emotional stressors in your current environment. What about your childhood trauma? Once again, especially for women, and there are so many studies on this, if we look at just purely your inflammation levels, and this has been very well studied, very well documented, we know that people who score a 2 or higher on the ACEs test, the Adverse Childhood Experiences test, decades later, they are prone to higher inflammation levels than those who did not score a 2 or higher on that same test. That says something. So we need to think about childhood trauma, and a lot of there's a lot of root causes to anxiety and depression, but I am also telling you that trauma history, childhood, early adult, current, all of that plays a really big role in our mental and emotional health and in our physical health too. So it's not to be discounted at all, our trauma history and our body's ability to cope with that and be able to respond to those stressors. Hormone imbalances. So I'm going to throw hormone imbalances in here. And for many of us, we had a lot of hormone imbalances when we first got our periods. And many of us were put on birth control quite young for that. For me, I know that I was getting my period every other week and I had a lot of skin issues. I had a lot of acne type issues as a teenager. And so the answer was the pill. And guess what? It cleared all of it up and it made my mental and emotional health a whole lot worse and long term did some real damage. And if we look at birth control, look, very personal decision. We support people who are on it, who are not on it, who want to come off of it, who do want to go on it. Like, it's totally your call. And please educate yourself before going on it from the side effects, from the long-term detriments. In case you don't know, birth control is a class 1 carcinogenic, meaning it can contribute to cancer and what else is tobacco. And you know how many warnings we have on tobacco products, cigarettes, and all these other products? Yeah, birth control is in the same category as that. And they don't tell us that at all. I've never heard a doctor mention that. Potentially the clotting issue, blood clot issue. I think that's the only thing I've ever heard of. And I was on birth control for 16 years and changed my form of birth control on several occasions and got talked out of staying on birth control. Tried to get talked out of staying on birth control. My OBGYN was really anti me getting my IUD out when I really wanted to. So like keep that in mind. Once again, uh, you can control a lot of things, and if this is something that's really important for you, go for it and maybe just support your body in some other ways to make sure that the chances of some of these longer term side effects, you don't fall into that category here. So birth control is a big one, just hormone imbalances for whatever reason. And by the way, there is almost always deeper underlying root causes of any sort of hormonal imbalances. Surgeries. If you've ever been under general anesthesia, the chances that you have heavy metal overload issues is pretty high. There's a lot of heavy metals in general anesthesia. Let alone, let's just talk about what surgery is. They are opening a part of your body and going in and messing with organs and things that are in there. And sometimes this is necessary, which is like totally fine and great. Like, thank goodness we have some of these Western medicine capabilities and options and these surgeons that are great. And once again, stressors. And so let's just think about these stressors. Also, depending on what type of surgeries, I've worked with a lot of people with gallbladder surgery, a lot of people with a variety of weight loss surgeries, gastric bypass, the sleeves, all that kind of stuff. And man, anytime you remove an organ, anytime you mess with your body's natural systems, C-sections, I mean, really big deal. Just by the way, they are 100% necessary in certain circumstances. And once again, let's control our controllables and what is maybe not totally necessary or required. Drinking alcohol, drinking soda. Let's mostly, I'll say, I think we all know at this point, drinking sodas are not obviously the best for our health. If you do one here and there, like, cool, totally your call. Let's just be mindful of all the other things that we're doing for our health. Drinking alcohol, it's never good. And if you're doing it in social settings and in moderation and out of enjoyment and celebration and not as a way to numb and cope and relax, yeah, I think that's fine. As long as we're keeping an eye on what this really looks like. And I think your emotional relationship to alcohol matters more than anything else. Most people who drink pretty heavily or a decent amount, no, we're trying to cover up some stuff, and it's a coping mechanism and not a good one. I say this as someone who alcohol was my main coping mechanism for a good portion of my life. Not good, not healthy. I've recently looked back at labs when I was in my early to mid 20s, and it showed. My alcohol consumption definitely showed on my lab work. And fortunately, my body's been able to recover. It's, in a much better spot now with all the work that I've done. And I really almost like never drink at this point. Once again, I don't not drink. I just don't drink very often. I drink out of celebration. I love the taste. I would say, by the way, I love the taste of alcohol. I love red wine. I love whiskey. I love tequila, mead, beer. I really enjoy the taste, and my body does not appreciate it. I don't metabolize it well. I don't sleep well that night. Doesn't mean I don't drink, and it just means that on the regular, I'm not drinking. So, but that goes a long way. We think about medications and or supplementation. And really this is medication. Some are required, some aren't. There are a lot of underlying root cause, especially for a lot of common medications that are prescribed. Statins, PPIs, and blood pressure meds. Once again, these can be useful. And tell you, I've reversed so many cases where these medications were required at one point or recommended. And now we can get levels back into a really good spot. We don't need these things. And so it's, once again, totally your choice if you want to medicate and maybe medication for a short period of time, and then we can wean off of it or come off of it. Keep that in mind. I'll say, birth control can be challenging to come off of. Anything that impacts your mental and emotional health, especially SSRIs, very challenging. A lot of side effects coming off of these. And so being aware of that and once again, asking questions, doing your own research before starting these things, really important, really valuable. So you know what you're getting yourself into. I'll also say a lot of acne medications, Accutane, spironolactone, while they can be helpful short term, there are some long-term consequences that we need to be aware of. And also be aware of anytime you ingest a supplement or a medication, it's going to be processed by your liver. We need to keep an eye on how much pressure we're putting on that liver, especially if you have toxin overload issues, maybe if you have chronic viral issues and you're on medications and you're on a bunch of supplements. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot for your liver. And once again, your liver can only keep up, which can impact your thyroid, can impact your sex hormones quite a bit, can impact your blood sugar regulation, can impact your gallbladder. Like, it impacts a lot of things here. And so we just need to be aware of all of these. So let's see, what else? A lot of caffeine, other types of chemical exposure, over exercising, under exercising. So it's when we think about this stress, we really need to think about all of these factors all at once. And this is really where I see, obviously Western medicine does not do a good job with any of these. But even functional medicine really, by and large, does not do a good job at a lot of these too. And this is where our practice, we've had a few people come in here pretty recently, and when we've talked about bigger root causes and things that are going on, and I share about what our programs look like and how we typically work with clients. I get the question and they come back with, okay, can you just give me a supplement and diet protocol and just do it that way? And my answer is no. Because here's what I do know. If you only do an elimination diet, if you only do a supplement protocol, like, yeah, you might get some short-term results and you might feel a little bit better. And I also know long-term, it's not going to stick. It's not going to last. And this is not the real path to health and healing long-term. And that is my only interest. Yes, I care about how you feel right now. Yeah, how you feel over the next couple months. And I really want you to feel better forever. That's really our goal within our practice. And that's really how I've built this practice is I'm not giving you some sort of random supplement protocol, some random dietary protocol, some random workout protocol. I can do all of that. I have the skills, I have the knowledge, and we incorporate all of that for sure. Not necessarily the elimination diets because we're not super big on that, but we do talk about nutrition and work through nutrition and lifestyle nutritional changes. And just doing these short-term protocols, like, look, like for most of us, and I by most, I mean like 98% of us, because those other 2% have already done a lot of work in those other arenas. We need all of this. We need all of this all together to be able to heal and stay healed long term. And this is really where I see weight loss crisis and perimenopausal crisis coming into play right now. And people just want to throw supplements and HRT and medications and these things that are short-term fixes. And they have a time and a place for some people at times. And I really say that hesitantly. And I'm going to explain where I'm seeing one big exception here. But we need to look at all of this because our health isn't just our weight. It's not just our digestive tract. It's not just our brain health. It's not just our toxin load. It's not just inflammation. It's not just our physical environment. It's not just what we're putting in our body. It's not just what we're thinking. It's all of things, all of the time, all together. And we have to control what we can and work towards a lifestyle, if you are interested in long-term healing and feeling really good, that caters to this. And it's not going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. It's going to shift. It's going to change. It's going to evolve. And that's part of the process too, is learning how to change and shift and evolve. And I talk about riding the waves, riding these waves all the time and connecting with your body and how is your body asking to be supported at this time? What is stressful for your body right now, internally and or externally, both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of these things. And how can we support it the best that we have in our capacity at this time? So I think that's a really big deal when it comes to all of this. I think the one, I really say this with an asterisk right now. The one kind of minor exception that we're seeing right now is with some of these GLP-1 medications, whether that is micro or macro dose of these things, is people are reporting and understanding more of, I didn't realize how much food had control over me. And the phrase that is being used is food noise. And yeah, this is a very real thing. And this is where I think sometimes, like, one, maybe let's look at the mental and emotional piece of this and our mental and emotional connections to food. And we can eliminate food noise, by the way, which most people have before doing any of this type of work. Let's really look at this because you can quiet the food noise when you're not, when you're mentally and emotionally in a better place and you work through some of these connections and understandings of this. I'll also tell you, almost anyone in the fitness industry, and I can only assume this goes into like a lot of professional athletes where their physical health is a huge piece of their livelihood and they have to be very tuned into this. But also, by the way, anyone who's been a personal trainer, almost all of us come from a background of body dysmorphia, food issues, food dysfunction, whether that's actual eating disorders, disordered eating patterns, and there is a lot of food noise. And by the way, this is for generalized population as well. And I'm seeing some of these people in these more elite spaces or professional spaces. You're like, oh, I didn't know this was a big deal. Yeah, I mean, I could have told you. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I suffered from it too, and I know how big of a deal it is. By the way, a medication is not the way to necessarily fix it. And yeah, it can help shed some light on the fact that it does exist. So just being mindful and being aware of that, yeah, absolutely, that can be a big deal. So looking at all of this, this is why I designed the practice the way I do. And this is why, where I'm in the process right now of bringing on a new practitioner and, someone who is very well versed in testing and supplementation and elimination diets, great. And that's not what we do. I need someone who can help and look at the bigger picture because all of this matters and all of this stress matters and all of this matters when it comes to our health, our wellness, our well-being, our hormones, weight loss, all of it. And if our focus is so narrowed when it comes to stress, this is why so many people don't heal or stay healed long term. So food for thought, something to consider, and really something to think about when we think about health and healing. And this is why largely random supplementation, elimination diets, and some of these things that, one size fits all approaches, these don't work because our stresses are different. My stressors are not the same as someone else's stressors, and nor should they be. All of our lives are a little bit different. Yeah, there are a lot of similarities and a lot of things to look at. And this is where blood work can be very helpful, but this is also where health history. We've got to dig deep into what was your trauma history? What's your mental and emotional connection to food, to alcohol, to all of these things? And how do we start to reframe and reshape that? And because they're all such a big deal when it comes to overall health and healing. So hope you found this helpful and hopefully it helped open your eyes a little bit more as to how do we define stress and what does this really look like? And how do we really need to look at this from a larger perspective and more in-depth perspective when it comes to our own healing? So thank you for listening. As always, please like, subscribe, follow. If it resonates, a 5-star review really, really, really means the world to us. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.